Now, before we actually install SQL Server, I want to go back and revisit this idea of components. And I want you to understand how these things work with SQL Server. In a different video, I believe it's when I was talking about hardware requirements, I pointed out that SQL Server loads different chunks of functionality in the designation as components. In other words, they basically segregated off different pieces of functionality and said, okay, if you want this, you can turn it on, and if you don't, you can just not install this component and you won't have this functionality, okay? So the general functionalities that we need in a SQL Server environment get installed as components, but I want to go through these so that you understand what they are. First of all, you have the SQL Server database engine. Now, this is the brains of SQL Server. This is your core database engine where your data is stored and maintained. It handles any kind of replication. It handles any of the search functions and any of the tools for data management. Those get installed when you install SQL Server because that's the brains of it. That's what makes SQL Server SQL Server. Now, Analysis Services is a group of functionalities that creates the ability for you to store and then provides you tools for providing online analytical processing and data mining functions. This is also called data warehousing. You'll hear it called OLAP, online analytical processing, all kinds of things. But if you're going to do that, you will have to load the Analysis Services components. Then there's reporting services, and this is a functionality Microsoft introduced not too long ago, 3 or 4 years, I guess, maybe more than that now, time's flying. But this lets you generate reports, store the reports, and the big thing here is distribution of these reports. Now, it uses XML to store the format of the report, and then it uses SQL Server itself to store these databases, but it does some really cool stuff. A good example is if there's a report that my Vice President of Sales needs to see every morning, I can schedule that report, and that report every morning at 6 o'clock gets pushed to his desktop. So when he comes to work, he just double clicks on the icon and boom, there's his report. And you can train most vice presidents of sales to double click on an icon. And it's much easier than trying to show them where to go to get a report or printing it and taking it to them and all that kind of stuff. Integration Services takes care of all of our data transfers and data manipulations. This is how we load our data warehouses and maintain the data that's inside them. And so you will see that component out there. You're going to see these on the install. Just wanted you to know what they are. Notification services you may or may not hear about a whole lot, but this is a platform where Microsoft's going to use the database functionalities for applications that are doing asynchronous processing that need to send notifications when certain aspects or certain threads have completed their particular task. Notifications is way outside the scope of this course, and you might want to go out there and read about it, and if you want to stick your head into something that's pretty cool and pretty complex, go take a look at notification services. The management tools are what we're going to use every day, and these are the tools that are going to access, configure, manage, and administer all of these other SQL Server components. The main one that we're going to use and see in this course is the SQL Server Management Studio. So all of these components can be loaded totally separately of each other except for the database engine. You're going to have that, and from time to time you may, for example, want to install SQL Server on the server back in the server room, but you might want to install the management tools on your client machine so that you can remotely manage the SQL Server from your client machine. Okay, so just wanted you to be familiar with these various components. We are going to see these when we do an installation of SQL Server, and I just wanted you to know what all you were looking at. And if nothing else, you can at least talk intelligently, carry on conversations with other database administrators and understand a little bit about what they're doing and what they're getting into. Now, once you get your head wrapped around SQL Server here, I would strongly suggest you go out and load up some of these components, dig into some of the documentation out on Microsoft's website, and start to play with them and see there's some really, really cool stuff here.